I also want to delete this. So that is that about that. So now you can see your version history. If you want to preview, you want to see how this will work, you click on the web preview or you click on P, and it will see, you will see how your application actually works. You'll be able to test it, click on the buttons and see how your application will work. And you can also close the preview by pressing that web preview again, and you can test your device. You can test your application on your device, meaning that you can install Thunkable application and you can use this to test your application, how it work actually work on your mobile phone before you finally publish and download it. You can also share it with your friends and that are also familiar with Thunkable and see they can delete the project. You can duplicate the project and you can also definitely see your accounts and settings like that, but we are not going to be looking at that. And now you have several components. The components, like I said, are the element that make up your page. When you're using an application, you see that most of the time you relate to some things, the buttons, the text, the input feed, but most of the time you're not paying attention to them. But for now, that is what we call the component. So we can see that you have several components that Thunkable is giving you the button. To use any of these components on your screen or on your page, what you just need to do is click on them, hold it down and drag it to the page. So you will definitely have it on the page. So you can then, when you click on it, you see that the details, like when I make this screen to be active, for example, if I click on the screen, you can see that the details of the screen appear on the side. I can decide to rename it by double clicking it. You can call it screen edit and press enter. I can edit the details, make it scrollable, change the background, change the orientation, change the visibility and the like. So let's say, okay, I want to update, I want to edit the details of my button. I can just click on this button or the component. So call this button, call this component, you are still right. So I can click on this particular component I'm working with, which is the button, and I also see the details. So anytime you want to manipulate or edit or update or change the details of a particular component, make sure that component is active by you clicking on it. So if I click on this button now, I can see that, okay, the name of the button, I'll change it to maybe button edit. I don't know why this keep coming to mind. So I press enter. I can change the text that appear. Maybe this is my sign up button. I can change it. I can change the font size. I can change so many things. We're going to be seeing all this in action. But just that, if you want to edit a particular component, make sure that component is actually active. And from there, it depends on any component you want to work on. Let's say you want to work with text, you want to write something like hello world, for example. You drag your text and you can also move. Anyway, you can see the drag and drop interface. So you can, the label allow you to work with text, so don't forget my label is active. I can rename it and say label heading, the component name and what it is doing. That's the naming convention I really love. The label, the component name and what it is doing. So label heading. So what did I want to call it? Let's say I want to call it hello world. Hello world. This is just an introduction to Thunkable and the interface. So you can see once this is active, this component, I can edit it, I can change the font, I can change the color, I can make it bold, I can change the orientation and so on and so forth. But make sure that anytime you are dragging a component to a page, the first thing you should do is to rename it. So because let's say for example you have several labels. For example, you have this label 1, it's called label 1, call this one label 2. By the time you go to the blocks, which is where you edit, where you work on the logic or the functionality, you might not know which one is actually what. So let's say you have renamed this. By the time you get to the block, this block is where you work with your, this is where you work on the logic. Okay, when I click on this button, I want this to happen. When I click on that button, I want that to happen. So that is where you do that. So you can see, I see label 2, I see all the elements or all the components on my screen or on my design. So I can see that I can actually relate with this. Okay, this is the label heading, this is the heading label. I can relate with this is button edit. But what am I doing with the label 1? what am I doing with label 2? So you see the importance of renaming your component now. So I will delete that. So if you want to work with text, use label. If you want to work with button, you can see how to do that. So to delete it, I'll click on it and I'll repeat what I've done the other time. Make it active and come and click on this delete icon. And now, so you also have the rich text. So you also have your image. You can drag and drop your image. If you want to work with image, the same thing, rename and pick the picture, edit the details if it is active. So you also have your group. Let's say you want to group some elements together. Like, okay, I want to group this and this and this together. So you use your group, you use group to group. So this is a group now. So the elements that I want to group together, I'll just bring them. Let's say I want to group this label together with this. You can see that this label is under this group. So like, let's say just a way of you grouping some things together. Let's say together with this button, I want to group it. So you can see that the button is also under the group. So but I will just delete it. So the group is just to attach some element together. You also have the input feed, text input, which is, let's say you want to take some entries from the user, then you use the text input. That is another component. So this allows the user to text to write something. So if I preview it now, you will actually see that I am able to type. So that is how to get input from the user. And also working with data, the different types of inputs that we have working with media, you are going to be seeing all this in practical action. But get to know that your design is your user interface, your component is the element that make up the design or that make up the user interface, and you also have the blocks, which is where you work with your logic. Like, okay, when, for example, when I click this button, I want this. So you can see that when I click this button, it gives me different things or different attribute that I can work with using this button. So let's say you can see when button edit is click, then I want to do something. You can see everything is, it is a concept of programming, but you are not actually programming. You are using a drag and drop interface, and you can build your idea using this. And you're going to be seeing how you're going to be doing this particular application that I demonstrated to you earlier. So you can see when the button edit is click, I want this to happen. Let's say I want to change this, to change set heading text to button was clicked. So that means that when I click this button, it will change the label heading to button was, it will set that label heading to button was clicked. So let's see that in action. You can see design is your user interface, while backend is what happened underneath, like the logic that is powering your application. So that it's not just about design, just not about the color, but when I click, I want something to happen. When I log in, I want something to happen. So where you are working on those things that are happening, you are doing it inside the block tab of your page. So if you preview this now, I want to just demonstrate when the sign up button, you can see button was clicked. So triggering action, working with the logic, working with how the user interacts with the application underneath is actually done with the block. And with that, I'm very sure that you now have a brief introduction to the interface of Thunkable, and I'm very sure that you are ready to start building. Of course, you will still be seeing these data, assets, and sets along the line application, but I think the basic thing you need to know or this to see about Thunkable, I have been able to show you without brief introduction to Thunkable. Now the next thing will now be to go back to our drawing board and start building out our idea. And we're going to be starting with the authentication, after which we go to the list of products, and we are going to go into the product details and products, please order. But we are just going to be taking it one step at a time. We're going to be taking it one step at a time. There's no need to, you see how easy it actually is to build an idea. So we're going to start with the authentication, which implies creating the user, signing them in, and also also navigating them to the page where they can see all the products.